So it's my privilege to introduce you to Mr. Ken Blanchard. Ken has spent the last 55 years of his life learning everything he can about effective management and leadership techniques. He earned his bachelor's degree in government and philosophy from Cornell University, his master's degree in sociology and counseling from Colgate, and his PhD in educational administration and leadership from Cornell University. In 1982, Ken co-authored the book, The 1 Minute Manager. It has now sold more than 17 million copies worldwide in 27 languages and still regularly appears on bestseller lists. Ken has written over 60 books in all, and he is on Amazon's Hall of Fame as one of its top 20 selling authors. Ken's the chairman and chief spiritual officer of the Ken Blanchard Companies, a global leader in workplace learning, employee productivity, and leadership effectiveness. Ken, it's our privilege to have you here. He's also like a really fun hang. So you should just know that. But Ken, please come on up. Would you welcome Ken Blanchard?
Thanks a lot. Well, all the great marriages I've seen, the men realize they married above themselves, and the mayor certainly married above himself, I think. Well, you've been sitting here for a while and eating and all. Why don't you stand up? I got a couple of things I want you to do. Got to get some energy in this room. I'm going to ask you to do two things. When you finish one, I'm going to put my hand up. When you see my hand up, put your hand up and shut your mouth, and then we'll go to the second one. Okay, first thing I want you to do is I want you to wander around for about 30 seconds and greet as many people as you possibly can, but greet them in a special way. Greet them as if they're unimportant and you're looking for somebody much more important to talk to. So greet each other as if you're unimportant. Okay, put your hand up. Hand up. Okay. All right, now what I want you to do, another 30 seconds, I want you to greet as many people as you possibly can, but this time greet them as if they're a long-lost friend and you are really glad to see them. Okay, put your hand up. Put your hand up. All right. Quiet. Put your hand up. Okay, you can sit down. You can sit down. All right. Now, why did I do that, except I'm from California, and we're going to bring in some hot tubs here in a minute. But I have found over the years that if you want to create a great family, a great business, a great government, whatever, you have to manage people's energy, including your own. Now, where was there more energy in the room, the first activity or the second? Second, significant. And what did I do to change the energy in the room? All I changed was what you were focusing on and thinking about. From a negative thought, these are unimportant people, to these are long-lost friends. And the energy in the room just went crazy. Now, how many of you know that the brain and the computer have a lot in common? Did you ever know that? Both the brain and the computer do not know the difference between the truth and what you tell it. You put information in the computer, it doesn't say, where'd you get those facts? Those facts are wrong. What does the computer do? It does whatever it can with the information you give it. What have we said for years about the computer? Garbage in what? Garbage out. Do you know the same way about your brain? If you woke up this morning and looked in the mirror and said, you were fabulous, your brain wouldn't say, who are you kidding? I know you a lot better than that. And so one of the really powerful things in life is what do you put in your mind? And what's really interesting is what you put in your mind comes out in your behavior. Now, did I tell you how to behave with unimportant people? No. But what did you do? Very little eye contact, very little touching, and all. Then all of a sudden I said, these are long-lost friends. that you're really glad to see. And what happened? Your face is lit up. You start to hug each other, laugh, and all. And I didn't tell you what to do. And so what I want to do for a few minutes, and they only said I had 25 minutes. I don't even loosen up in 25 minutes, but I want to get rid of some of your stinking thinking, as my friend Zig Ziglar would always say. He said, I'm going to give you a checkup from the neck up and get rid of some of your stinking thinking about leadership. And I think it'll be powerful for you, for this city, for this state, if you listen to what I have to say. And what's interesting is that if it's about beliefs, let's just start off. How many of you here think that you're a leader? Put your hand up if you think you're a leader. Now, why isn't everybody's hand up? The reason your hands aren't up is a lot of you think that leadership is about a position. And I don't have a high enough position to say that I'm a leader. Now, let me ask you a second question. Think about who impacted your life the most. If you could think of somebody who really impacted who you are as a human beings, who would that be? Now, think about that for a minute. Okay, how many of you, when you were thinking about who impacted your life, were thinking about a manager or a supervisor you had at work? No, how many of you were thinking about your mother, your father, your grandmother, your grandfather, an uncle, a neighbor, a friend? So the first thing I want you all to get is every one of you are leaders. Some of you have life role leadership positions. Is there anything more important than being a parent? Is there anything more important than being a spouse or a friend? Those are life role leadership positions. Some of you have organizational leadership positions where you belong to an official organization and all. But you are all leaders. And what is leadership? All leadership is an influence process. Anytime you attempt to influence the thinking, beliefs, or development of someone else, you're engaging in leadership. So every one of you are a leader unless you're going off on some island by yourself. So that's the first thing I want you to get in your head. You're all leaders. Secondly, I want you to understand that the greatest leadership role model of all time is Jesus. And you might say, really? Well, I want to tell you, I didn't know that initially. I had written the 1 Minute Manager, I had developed situational leadership, and I had all those kind of things. And I wasn't a big believer or anything. The 1 Minute Manager came out. We're on the Today Show, it's Labor Day 1982. It went on the bestseller list the next week, never came off the list for 2.5 years. Today, 30-some years later, it still sells 200,000 or 300,000 books a year. And we just came out with the new 1 Minute Manager because we hadn't rewritten it in all those years. And somebody said, you ought to have an ebook, which we didn't have, and went back and read it. We laughed because he's on his intercom system. Any of you ever hear of an intercom system if you're young? And everybody worked with him, was right there in the office. And he was kind of a command and control person. He set the goals. He decided who was going to get praise and reprimand and all that kind of thing. And today, leadership is much more about side by side. It's about partnerships and all those kind of things. So we rewrote it. The 1 minute reprimand is now in 1 minute redirection rather than the reprimand. But I didn't know that Jesus was the greatest leadership role model. After the 1 Minute Manager came out, I get invited to be on Robert Shula's Hour of Power in his heyday, And he interviews me about the 1 Minute Manager. And here Shula says, Ken, I love the 1 Minute Manager, but you know who's the greatest 1 Minute Manager of all time? I said, who's that? He said, Jesus. I said, really? He said, yeah. He was very clear on goals. Wasn't your first secret 1 minute goal setting? I mean, he said to his disciples, come with me, I'm going to make you fishers of men. I said, yeah, that's our first secret. And he said, you and Tom Peters didn't invent management by wandering around. Jesus did. He wandered from one little village to another. If anybody showed any interest, he'd praise them, heal them. Isn't that your second secret, 1 minute praising? Yeah. And he said if people stepped out of line, he wasn't afraid to redirect them or even give them a reprimand. He threw the money lenders out of the temple. Isn't that your third secret, 1 minute reprimand? Yeah. So he's the greatest leader of all time. I went, whoa, that's really interesting. And then I run into Bill Hybels, from Willow Creek. I found out he's training all of his people in situational leadership. I said, why are you doing that? He says, because that's the way Jesus led. He changed his leadership style as the development level of his people got better. So like in the first commission, they were all enthusiastic beginners. So what is there? About a page and a half in directed behavior. Stay here, wear this, do that. And then you watch in the Bible, he changes his style from directing to coaching to supporting. What happens at the end of Matthew? He says, go and make disciples of all nations and baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's all the direction they get. Why? Because he had trained them and take them from dependency to independence. And I went, whoa, this is really interesting. And so then I get a call, would I write a book with Norman Vincent Peale? I said, is he still alive? I mean, my parents went to his church before I was born. No, he was alive. He was fabulous. And Norman and Ruth grabbed Margie up and wrapped him in their arms, and they said, you know, the Lord's always had you in his team. You just haven't suited up yet. And so suiting up became the cry. And, you know, then I was double-teamed by Bob Buford and Hybels and all these guys. And finally, I realized, man, this guy was fabulous, see? I'm a behavioral scientist, see? So what did I do? I went to Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Acts. I want to know what the man did. I'm a studier of behavior, you know. Before I call him God, I want to know what the guy did. I was blown away. Everything I ever taught or wrote about leadership, Jesus did with these 12 incompetent guys he hired. I mean, you wouldn't have hired that lot. I mean, that was a ridiculous group. I mean, how slow do they have to get? He keeps on doing miracles. Well, tell me something else, you know. I mean, come on. You know, and I was doing a program in Atlanta one time with John Ortberg, who's one of my favorite people, and he's out at a church in Menlo Park. And I said, John, why would you fly across the country to tell these people that Jesus is the greatest leadership role model of all time? Because we started a Lead Like Jesus ministry that's now in 40 nations around the world. And John turned to the crowd. He's a great storyteller. And we had about 1,000 or so in the church, and we were teleconferencing around the country. And he said, let's just assume 2,100 years ago you were a gambler. Now, I know some of you don't like gambling, but let's just assume it. Where would you have bet your money on lasting? The Roman Empire and the Roman army, or a little Jewish rabbi with 12 inexperienced followers? And he said, isn't it interesting, 2,100 years later, we're still naming kids Jesus, Peter, Paul, and Mary, and we name our dogs Nero and Caesar. I rest my case, see? I mean, I listened to the governor talking about kindness and all this stuff. That all came from the Bible. You probably are like me, you don't even know where it all came from, but you're still on his team. You'll sign up one of these days, you know? And so Jesus is the greatest leadership role model of all time. The third thing I want you to get is there's only one leadership approach that Jesus approved for his followers: servant leadership. And if you remember in the Bible, John and James bring their mother to Jesus. And she said, can my one son sit in your left hand in heaven and my other son in your right hand in heaven? She thinks it's a hierarchy up there. And so she wants them in. And so after Jesus says, it's not for me to grant, he goes over to the disciples. And we love to watch the visual Bible. And the disciples are really ticked off. Why? Because John and James beat him to the punch. I mean, why wouldn't they want to get there first? So Jesus sits them down, and he gives that famous speech. He says, the Gentiles lord power over people. They use authority. Not so with you. Now, is that a pretty powerful thing? I want you all here to say that. Say, not so with you. And he essentially said, if you want to be a lead, you need to follow. If you want to be first, you need to be last. Even I have come to serve rather than be served and die for other people. So that's the only leadership style he knows works. Now, in industry, when I talk about servant leadership, a lot of people think I'm talking about the inmates running the prison or trying to please everybody or some religious movement. But they don't understand that there's two aspects of servant leadership. One is the leadership aspect of servant leadership, which is vision and direction and goals. See, leadership is about going somewheres. Jim Collins had it right when he said, effective leaders have a both-and attitude towards results and people. But vision and direction and goals says this is where we're going, this is how we want to operate, this is what we want to accomplish. And if you don't have a clear vision that people know what business you're in, what your picture of the future is, what you're trying to accomplish, what the values will guide your journey, and the goals you have in mind, if there's no vision, what can people follow? If there's nothing to follow, what do they get to follow? Themselves. Now, why is Washington such a self-serving system? I'm talking to the young senator here. It's terrible. And it's not one party's problem. It's because we don't have a sense of what business we're in this country anymore. We don't know what we're trying to accomplish. And we have no values. Every value is relative now. There is no values that stick. I mean, freedom of speech is not a value anymore. If I made some comment about some group that doesn't believe what I believe, they wouldn't say, Ken, I disagree with you. They would be surrounding my business while I'm flying home. That's freedom of speech. And so I'm looking for a candidate or somebody who will create a vision for this country. I wrote an article called A Leadership Vision for America, and I tried to get it to Romney and Obama and all, but they don't want to hear anything about leadership. I hope we can find somebody that does. Because you got to start with the leadership part of servant leadership. Otherwise, you got nothing to serve. And whose responsibility is it to get vision and direction? It's the leaders. It's the hierarchy. It doesn't mean you don't involve people, but if they don't have it, it's your fault. Look in the damn mirror. Now, once the leadership part of servant leadership is clear, now you get to the servant part, and now you got to turn the pyramid upside down, and now you work for the people. Your job is to help them what? Win. Now, Jesus was so clear on his vision. What? We're in the business of go fishing for men, the picture of the future. We want to make disciples of all nations. The values were to love God with all your heart and all your mind, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Very clear vision. He got these 12 inexperienced guys to give their life for that vision. Because people want to work for something that means something. But I tell you, once he knew that he was going to be around physically to lead more, he moved to the servant part of servant leadership. And what did he do? At the Last Supper, he got up and he got a basin and filled it with water and got towels and washed their feet. And if you'd ever talked to anybody about those times for a leader like that to wash their feet, that was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And a lot of people, when I talk about servant leadership, they say, if I become a servant leader, aren't I going to give away my title and all of my position? No. What did Jesus say after he washed the feet? The first thing he said, you call me teacher, you call me Lord. Rightly so. But just as I have done for you, do for others. And that's what you got to do. Once the thing is set, you work for them. Stop creating. You can always tell organizations run by self-serving leaders because everybody is sucking up the hierarchy. You know, their boss, and their boss, you know. And what happens, you know, you've experienced this as a customer. You know, you're dealing with a frontline person and they got a problem, and they're more concerned about what their boss is thinking than you, and they're a bunch of ducks. They're going, quack, quack, it's our policy. Quack, quack, I just work here. Quack, quack, I didn't make the rules. Quack, quack, do you want to talk to my supervisor? Quack, 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 you know. And what you find, if you have an organization where people have turned the pyramid upside down and they're working for their people, you got eagles. People who soar above the crowd. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. I want to give you a beautiful example of the difference between a self-serving organization and serving. When I travel, and I should have brought it up with me, I have this thing I put around my neck. I call it my geezer pouch. You know, you get older, you forget things. And in my geezer pouch, I have my ticket, my itinerary, my identification, a pen and pencil, and anything. And I go around the airport, what do you need? You know, I got it here in my geezer pouch, you know. And I've been trying to get my wife to get a geezer pouch because she can't find anything in that damn pocketbook of hers. But, so one day I loaded my beauty and I left it on my desk, see. And this is about 2 years after 9/11, so they're a little uptight about who you are. And I pull into the San Diego airport and I realize I got no official identification and I don't have time to go back home. And I got to get on a plane because I'm working for a group the next day. And so the only book I've ever written, I got my picture on the cover, is one I wrote with Don Shula, the old Miami Dolphins coach. They took our picture at Miami Stadium. It's called Everyone's a Coach. And I ran into the bookstore at the San Diego airport, and luckily they had a copy, and I bought it. So the first airline I went to was Southwest. Now, I wrote a book with Colleen Barrett, the president of Southwest. There's no accident why they kill everybody in the airline industry, you know. The book is called Lead with Love. And love is spelled L-U-V because that's their stock symbol. And their office is on Love Lane. They flew originally out of Love Field. And so luckily I got to go to Southwest Airlines. So the guy's checking my bag, and I said to him, I apologize. I don't have a license or a passport, because he said, what's your identification? And I showed him the book. And the guy shouts out, this man knows Don Shula. They said, put him in first class. I mean, they don't have first class. They didn't even have business select then. And they're going, hey, yeah, high five. Hey, you know, Shula, you know, and everything, you know. And there's an older guy there who says to me, Ken, I know the security guards upstairs. I'll get you through there, too. Which he did. He guided me through. It was unbelievable. The next day, I'm getting on another flight, you know, before they could overnight my license to me. It was one of the big airlines. They were always talking about, you know, Chapter 11 and all these kind of problems with the union and all this kind of thing, you know. And I showed my book out at the street, and the duck doo-doo started to fly. I want to tell you, quack, you better go to the ticket counter. I showed the woman, quack, you better talk to my supervisor. We call the supervisory duck the head mallard. You know, they just quack at a higher level. Have you ever seen them? And pretty soon, I must be up 3 levels. I'm talking to a guy in a suit and a tie. So I started to give him a hard time, and I could tell he was a bureaucrat, because you can always tell them they have really tight underwear on, and they waddle a little bit, you know. And so I had to change my whole tactics, see. And so I said to him, what a difficult job you must have. I so appreciate you taking me into consideration. I mean, I had to suck up the hierarchy, and he let me on the plane. But you got to go through these gyrations, see. And so what Jesus was really saying is once the vision is set, you know, you're not working for the hierarchy, you're working for the people. And the problem with so many organizations, we get them bureaucratized. And you think that the purpose is holding the policies and the rules and regulations. I said to Colleen after I met her, because this was before I met her, I said, how did that guy able to do that? She said, it's interesting, Ken, we let them bring their brains to work. She said, that guy didn't assume you had superimposed your picture on that book to get by him. And besides, the bigger issue is whether I got weapons. Now, do you think that guy likes to work there? Because he actually can use his brains rather than quacking like a duck? And poor Jesus, he was surrounded by ducks. You know, all the Pharisees, you know, you can't do it on Sunday. Quack, 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 you know. I mean, here he is walking around in sandals and all this duck doo-doo. Really, it must have been a mess. And all that kind of thing. And I want to tell you, today he's probably upset too, because we've created hierarchies out of churches. And we're sucking up the hierarchies and all that, rather than getting out and serving. And what the governor's talking about, what people are talking about here, is what if this was the most loving state in the whole nation? And a loving state is that the real customers are the people that are hurting, the people that Jesus wanted us to go to, the widows and the poor and the poverty and all the people that need our help and all. And you could really make a difference in all. I'm trying to help people in San Diego. We say, as you fly in America's finest city, we got 48% graduation rate from high school. We got 10,000 homeless. We got this and all. But yeah, we don't have a vision for the city. And so I'm working with a new mayor who came in after we got rid of our sex maniac, and really trying to get a vision for the whole thing. And because that's what servant leadership is all about. Do you think you need a vision for your family? What is your goal for your family? What's your mission? What are your values and all? I was telling the group before, my son's a big speaker now, and he often starts off, I was telling them, and he'll say, you probably wonder what it's like to have been the 1-minute son, and he said, but when I was young and I got in trouble, I wish I had been punished like my friends, sent to my room, or when I was young, even spanked, but no. I had to go down to the dinner table and talk to my mother and my sister and my father about how my values were how my behavior was inconsistent with family values, which of course we established at an off-site retreat. And I mean, they said they were guinea pigs and all. But the point is if you really want your kids to develop, to be great citizens and all that, you got to really do something by setting a vision and all. Stop having people guess. And once that vision is set, now your job is not to sit around and evaluate and judge. Your job is to praise and encourage, and if they get a little off, redirect them and all. That's what servant leadership comes alive. So the 1-minute manager is servant leadership because it's got the goals for vision and direction, and then praising and redirection is all about turning the pyramid upside down. The final thing I want to end with you is that being a servant leader, being an effective leader, starts in the inside. Well, I was saying I want to change your beliefs, but I hope there's only 18 inches between your head and your heart. And I want to tell you, all the great leaders I know have a heart and intention to serve. The question you got to ask is, are you here to serve or be served? And that comes from your heart and all. And there's two things that get goofed up that get us off of thing. One is false pride, when you start thinking you're better than other people, and you're promoting yourself. That's an ego problem. You've edged God out. And the other problem is fear and self-doubt, where you're now think you're less than other people and you're protecting yourself. Both of those are ego things. And what you need to have is humility, so you're not going to be there, telling everybody how great you are, because people with humility don't think less of themselves, they just think about themselves less. And that's important. And then if you want to get over fear, you got to recognize that God didn't make any junk. God absolutely loves you. And he wants to be your partner. And he wants to walk with you. And he wants to change your heart. How many times in the Bible does it say, guard your heart, because it is the wellspring of life. And so effective leadership starts there. And John Ortberg wrote a wonderful book called At the End of the Game, It All Goes Back in the Box. And in that, he has a wonderful exercise that he says, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you think you're going home. And there's 2 piles of Post-its on your desk. One says important forever, and the other says temporary stuff. He said, put a Post-it on everything you see as you leave the office. Your computer, your desk, your secretary, the Coke machine, your receptionist, and when your car, and when you get home, your golf clubs and your bike. And when you get in the house, where are you going to push your Post-its? And I'm the chief spiritual officer, as he said, and I leave a morning message for everybody. And I left a message about this 4 days before our house burned to the ground in the 2007 fires. We lost everything we ever had from 25 years. And all of my people were sending me emails and voicemails saying, Ken, what a powerful exercise, because I realized today more than anything that what's really important in life is who you love and who loves you. The rest is temporary stuff. And nobody got hurt. We just lost 25 years of temporary stuff. And John, this book came out of interaction with his grandmother. She was an incredible Monopoly player. Any of you ever play Monopoly? He said she was vicious when she played Monopoly. When she played Monopoly, she acted like she was the illegitimate child of an affair between Donald Trump and Martha Stewart. And at the end of the game, she had everything and he had nothing. And she would get this grin on her face and she'd say, John, someday you're going to learn how to play the game. And so one summer when he was 13, this kid moved next door who was an incredible Monopoly player. And he practiced with this kid every single day because he knew his grandmother was coming in September. And Grandma came, he ran into the house, he gave her a hug and a kiss, and he said, Grandma, how about a Monopoly game? And her eyes lit up. And she said, let's go, John. But he was ready for her this time. And he came out of the chute, and he wiped his grandmother out. At the end of the game, he had everything. She had nothing. He had Park Place. He had Broadway, and she had nothing. He said it was the greatest day of his life. And his grandmother smiled, and she said, John, now that you know how to play the game, she said, let me teach you a lesson about life. It all goes back in the box. And I want to tell you, you talk about loving your neighbors and you talk about making a difference. Servant leadership is love in action. And if this is going to be the most loving state in this whole nation, the kindness the governor's talking about and all the different projects you have, get behind these because it's all about love and action. And you're going to make Jesus smile because that's really what he wants. And think about what you can do to make this the most loving, the most kind state. I'm going over after this to Boulder. My grandson's graduating from the University of Colorado, and so it's going to be a great treat to see him. It only took him 6 years, but they love it over there so much, they don't want to leave. But it is. And then I want to end just by saying to you, one of the most powerful movies to me, and some people, I get a lot of remarks from the religious right. You know, they think I'm a New Ager disguised as a Christian. But I love the movie Ghost. I don't know if you do. It's a story about this guy who's in sales who gets killed by a supposed friend. And he gets to stay on Earth, though as a ghost, to protect his girlfriend Molly, played by Demi Moore. And he gets to communicate her through this wonderful character that Whoopi Goldberg plays, Oda Mae. And at the end of the movie, it's so powerful. I always get worked up when I see the ending. Is he's avenged his death, and Sam is with Molly and Oda Mae on the rooftop of Molly's building. And all of a sudden, this white light comes towards them. And Oda Mae says, they're coming for you, Sam. And he looks at Oda Mae, he says, your mama would have been proud of you. And then he goes over in front of Molly, and if you ever saw the movie, he never told Molly he loved her. Molly would say, I love you, Sam, and what would Sam say? Ditto. And now, with tears coming down his eyes, he says, Molly, I love you. I've always loved you. And she's crying, and she says, ditto. And he turns to face the light, and he stops one last time, and he says, Molly, the remarkable thing about this is you can take the love with you. And that's all you're going to take out of this world. So start living it. Make this the most loving state in the United States. I'm proud of you, and God bless you.